just listening to a program about how nonprofit organizations work from start to finish in the United States on DoClick's Voice FM. If you missed anything, you can retrieve any part of the program from the DoClick's Voice FM archives.
Hello to everyone. This is your presenter Munaza Arfa on DoClick's Voice FM. John Bunyan said, "You have not lived today until you have done something for someone who can never repay you." Today, our topic is about a non-profit organization and the importance of a non-profit. We have invited Nasheeb Umar in our studio, who's the CEO of InfoTaxSquare.com, which is helping to establish non-profit organization for almost 2 decades all over the United States, and hundreds of professionals, including certified public accountants and attorneys, use InfoTaxSquare.com services for their clients to establish and cancel non-profits. InfoTaxSquare.com approval rate to register non-profits with the Internal Revenue Services is 100%. I know that you may have a lot of questions in your mind about a non-profit organization. I want to let you know that we will address as many as we can in today's program. We'll do more programs to cover more topics about a non-profit on DoClick's Voice FM in future. Let me jump on the program now to share what you want to know to establish, maintain, and close your non-profit organization. What is involved in starting and stopping a not-for-profit organization? What is the motive behind the decision to start a non-profit organization, even though a non-profit formation and its function requires significant sacrifices? There's always a meaningful motive behind to start something new. A motive can either be financial or social benefits. A non-profit is an entity which gives both benefits such as saving and securing. A non-profit entity saves humanity from a harmful life, and a non-profit organization helps donors to secure taxes. A non-profit is a legal entity which is created by the state and federal that helps humanity rather than staying contained to self-interest. In a non-profit organization, revenues are called contributions, whereas disbursements are called distributions. We will cover in this program the point of intersections between non-profit organizations and departments such as Secretary of State, Internal Revenue Services, and with the Attorney General Office, because a non-profit circles among 3 triangular departments from start to finish. We will also try to review every essential aspect of a non-profit which someone may need to know in order to initiate a non-profit institution. We'll cover today how to create a non-profit organization under state laws, how to acquire an employer identification number for a non-profit institution, how to file for federal tax classification with the Internal Revenue Services, why do we file a non-profit organization with the Attorney General's Office, and why do we file a non-profit organization with the Department of Revenue and the Division of Taxation and Finance? How do compliances help in reconciling complications and protecting from an automated or permanent cancellation of an NPO? It is important to comply with laws to maintain any legal entity regardless of a profit or a not-for-profit entity. Intentionally and unintentionally ignoring laws may wipe out your years of struggle in a moment. We'll cover in this program different aspects of a non-profit organization from registration through resignation. Before we start the program, let me first highlight the importance of DoClick's Voice FM. How does DoClick's Voice FM participate to help a society? We have no doubts about this organic route that DoClick's Voice FM empowers hidden talent across the globe. And any less fortunate entity and a person who's facing a financial disability to avail the opportunity of online visibility, which is vital and inevitable in today's world.
The program will return after a short break. You are listening to DoClick's Voice FM 24/7 Global Cloud Radio.
Are you looking for a company to help you establish your business and get a business license in the United States? InfoTaxSquare.com provides business registration and support services to help you set up your business in the United States. We will get you started whether you are a U.S. resident or not. InfoTaxSquare.com has been helping businesses since 2003. We have served thousands of happy clients across the United States. Call us today for a consultation. 1-866-754-4460 or 1-516-822-3100. Visit us at www.infotaxsquare.com. We will make it happen.
You deserve a healthy and happy life. In order to do this, make sure to keep you and your surroundings clean. This includes keeping your hands, nose, and eyes clean, and put time aside to work out. You're listening to DuClick's Voice FM, Global 24/7 Cloud Radio Station. We are now back to the program where we talk about starting, maintaining, and stopping a nonprofit organization.
What has evolved in DuClick's Voice FM, which may revolve your business around the internet? DuClick's Voice FM is the only online forum which gives 100% surety to index any of your posts in Google and other search engines in just days rather than weeks. DuClick's Voice FM gives length to your message for a visibility on the internet. Furthermore, it's a combination of voice and text which gives you a facility to listen to when you're driving and read when you're sitting in front of your computer. We urge every participant to support DuClick's voice. And our last questions from Nasheeb Umar, who is the CEO of InfoTaxSquare.com. And InfoTaxSquare.com is one of the leading companies of the United States that establishes business across the USA for US residents and non-US residents. How are you, Mr. Umar? And we welcome you in our studio to share your expertise about a non-profit registration and its compliances.
Munazza, I am fine and I thank you for having me here on DuClick's Voice FM to share my knowledge about registering and running a non-profit organization in the United States.
Can you please tell our listeners what is the history behind starting a non-profit organization?
Sure, Munazza, let me tell you the history behind starting a non-profit organization. Giving back to societies in different forms, such as in the form of cash contribution or service contribution, is an old-fashioned and tradition to help people and improve society's lifestyle. Generally, Munazza, a person gets motivated by financial benefits, and that is why a non-profit organization was given a legal status by the lawmakers to claim expenses to reduce tax liabilities for securing financial benefits, and holds a person accountable for collecting contributions and its legit distribution to stop mishandling funds of a non-profit organization. Munazza, based on my research, the first non-profit entity was started in the USA was in 1940, which was created by Edward L. Ryerson. She was a steel executive and she lived in Illinois. The name of the organization was Council on Foundation and it was funded by community individuals.
My next question to you is, what goals does a person achieve by establishing a non-profit organization? And what pushes an individual to help the community despite knowing that it is the duty of the state and it is very demanding and responsible process which demands dedication, inspiration, funding, and make you held accountable to the donors and departments?
Munazza, to do something different gives you energy, keeps you motivated, and restores your faith in what you are doing is a great, unique, and demanding cause for society. That keeps you free from the fear that you may be held responsible or accountable. A non-profit organization is created to serve society for many purposes, and the intention behind a non-profit organization must not be generating income, rather than the intention must be distribution of funds fairly that has been contributed by the donors to be spent for a good cause. Yes, Munazza, it is the duty of the state to help every citizen, but in practice, it is not possible for a state, so the community's people take some burden of the state, and in return, the state gives them financial benefits such as the state allows them to claim contribution on their income tax returns to reduce tax liabilities.
The program will return after a short break. You are listening to DoClick's Voice FM 24/7 Global Cloud Radio. Why doesn't a small business grow? The answer is simple. No flyers, no buyers. Is advertising expensive? The answer is yes. Does advertising need expertise? Yes again. Can you afford ads? The answer is generally no. So you might ask, what should I do? Do not let people forget your name. Act now instead. Call or send us an inquiry for 100% free advertising on DoClicksVoice.fm 24/7 Cloud Radio, the only global radio station that plays and posts your ads. Life has no replacement, so drive safe and call 911 for any emergency. Stay tuned on DoClick's Voice FM, a global 24/7 cloud radio, the only radio which optimizes your content in search engines and brings targeted traffic to achieve your goals. We are now back to the program where we talk about starting, maintaining, and stopping a nonprofit organization.
Now, I would like to ask you how many types of nonprofits are available to the state, and how would you know what type of nonprofit entity should you choose?
A nonprofit is called by many different names such as number 1, not-for-profit organization, number 2, non-profit organization, number 3, non-business entity, and number 4, a non-profit institution. Even though the names and indicators may be different, but the purpose still remains same: to register a non-profit entity. A state proposes different types of non-profit organization and you establish a non-profit based on the activities. Let me give a few examples to clarify it a bit better. Number 1, religious organizations where people of the same faith worship at religious sites such as churches, synagogue, mosque, and temples. Number 2, research and development or scientific organizations are also one kind of non-profit organizations which were established to discover or enhance technology to improve lifestyle. Number 3, a non-profit is created to help communities to provide basic human needs such as food, clothes, and a place to live temporarily or permanently.
Can you create a non-profit organization for political activities such as collecting funds to run a political election?
No, Munazza, a non-profit organization is not allowed for any political activities, and contribution in political activities is not tax deductible as well.
Now, tell our listeners who manages a non-profit organization and what are the positions a non-profit organization may have.
Generally, a non-profit is managed by officers, directors, employees, trustees, president, vice president, secretary, and managers.
How does a non-profit organization generate fundings to manage paying routine expenses, including paying salaries for staff and management?
Munazza, like other businesses and organizations, a non-profit also needs funds to run. A non-profit organization generates donations through campaigns and acquires government grants rather than revenues it receives. Donations from generous people and organizations to operate. A donor and a donee play a vital role in rolling a non-profit. Munazza. A donor is a person or an organization who makes a contribution voluntarily in a form of cash or service, whereas a donee is a person or an organization who receives gift to start and run a non-profit organization. Finally, providing service as a volunteer for a non-profit organization is not part of the donation, so it is not tax deductible.
Could you please tell our listeners what are the steps to register for a non-profit organization?
Registration of a non-profit organization is a triangular process. Every non-profit organization is registered with number 1, the state or county, which depends on the activities of a non-profit organization. Number 2, the Internal Revenue Services for federal tax exemption. Number 3, the Attorney General Office for state tax exemption.
That was quite informative. Now, could you please tell us what documents are filed to register for a not-for-profit organization?
Munazza, let me share a few basic documents that are filed to register a non-profit entity in the United States. Articles of Certificate of Incorporation are filed by the state or county, which depends on each state and the type of entity. For example, a non-profit for a hospital will be filed with the state, whereas a religious organization article is filed by the county clerk's office in the state of New York. After the approval from the state examiner, an employer identification number is applied to the Internal Revenue Services. Munazza, the EIN does not mean that you have gotten a federal tax exemption approval. Rather, it is simply issued to start a non-profit and open a bank account.
Now, could you please inform us how to acquire the status of federal tax exemption from the Internal Revenue Services for a non-profit organization?
After the initial incorporation filings with the state, we file 501c3 with the Internal Revenue Services along with number 1, bylaws, which normally includes purpose of a non-profit, titles of the officers and their duties and dissolution clause. Number 2, narrative description is filed, which includes detail, purpose, and how a non-profit will serve communities. Number 3, conflict of interest statement or a duality of interest statement is filed, which include policies and procedures of a non-profit entity, that any officer or trustee will not conflict with the position, financial responsibility, or other duties performed by non-profit and the community. Since filing a non-profit entity is a complex and time-consuming process, I highly recommend to hire an experienced professional to prepare and file documents to concerned agencies to reduce the chance of rejection for your non-profit organization articles.
The program will return after a short break. You are listening to DuClick's Voice FM 24/7 Global Cloud Radio. DuClick's Voice FM is committed to providing you 100% free advertising to make sure you're successful. We encourage and request every user and listener to support us in maintaining and improving technology. DuClick's Voice FM would like to send well wishes to all our valued listeners who are celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, and observing special events. We hope this special day brings you all that your heart desires. We are now back to the program where we talk about starting, maintaining, and stopping a nonprofit organization.
What is the procedure to process non-profit filing with the Attorney General Office?
After getting the approval of federal tax exemption from the Internal Revenue Services, which is also called 501c3, the approved articles are submitted to the Attorney General Office to acquire a state tax exemption, which is important to claim donations and receive contributions in tax returns.
The next question that I'm going to put in front of you is related to tax exemptions. So tell me, what is the use of federal and state tax exemptions?
Without having tax exemption from the state and federal, a non-profit organization cannot claim donation and a donor cannot claim contribution to get the tax benefit.
Mr. Umar, it happens sometimes that a non-profit lose exemption status. So under what circumstances does a non-profit lose its non-profit status?
Munazza, in the United States, every taxpayer is required to follow the tax guidelines, and a non-profit is also a legally registered entity. There are a number of reasons that may wipe out a non-profit organization, and I'm going to share a few of them with your listeners. Number 1, if it is failed to file tax returns to the state and federal for 3 consecutive years. Number 2, if it is failed to renew on or before the due date. And number 3, if it is involved in any prohibited activities.
Now, tell us, what is the requirement to register the same non-profit organization or a branch office to operate in multiple states? And does each branch office obtain a separate federal and state exemptions?
For an expansion, a non-profit organization is required to register in each state under principal non-profit organization to extend operation of the same organization in a different state. And let me explain the process. A foreign entity is established under a principal non-profit organization to extend operation in the state where the operation will be started with the principal non-profit organization. It is also known as a certificate of authority and transact business in another state. Same EIN and federal tax exemption will be used rather than applying for a new one. The state exemption form will be submitted to a new Attorney General office to get the state tax exemption. Finally, sales tax permit will be obtained from the Department of Revenue where a foreign entity of principal non-profit is organized.
The program will return after a short break. You are listening to DoClick's Voice FM 24/7 Global Cloud Radio.
Are you looking for a company to help you establish your business and get a business license in the United States? InfoTaxSquare.com provides business registration and support services to help you set up your business in the United States. We will get you started whether you are a U.S. resident or not. InfoTaxSquare.com has been helping businesses since 2003. We have served thousands of happy clients across the United States. Call us today for a consultation. 1-866-754-4460 or 1-516-822-3100. Visit us at www.infotaxsquare.com. We will make it happen.
You deserve a healthy and happy life. In order to do this, make sure to keep you and your surroundings clean. This includes keeping your hands, nose, and eyes clean, and put time aside to work out. You're listening to DoClick's Voice FM Global 24/7 Cloud Radio Station. We are now back to the program where we talk about starting, maintaining, and stopping a nonprofit organization.
Moving forward to the next question, is there any blanket registration of a non-profit available which gives an authority to transact operation of a non-profit organization universally under one registration?
Munazza, each state of the United States has defined its own rules and regulation to incorporate a non-profit organization. So there is no blanket non-profit organization is existed in the USA, which gives an authority to a non-profit entity to operate universally under one registration.
Can an existing non-profit organization move or domesticate from one state to another with a history such as age of non-profit organizations?
It depends on each state. Most states do allow it, whereas a few do not allow the move from one state to another. You may get information from the state if both the states allow the domestication of a non-profit organization.
The next question that I'm going to put is related to tax filing. So tell the listeners, what is tax filing requirement of a non-profit organization?
Every active non-profit entity, whether it has any activity or not, it is required to file the end of the year tax returns. A non-profit tax filing date is generally different from a regular business entity, which depends on the type of entity and state requirements.
Can a non-US resident register a non-profit organization in the USA, or a non-US resident can be a member of a non-profit organization?
In either case, a non-US resident can participate in non-profit organizations. There is no restriction in the United States for a non-US resident, which stops a non-US resident from registration of a non-profit.
Can you please tell our listeners about trademark registration now? So, Can a not-for-profit organization file for a trademark, and what is the process to protect name nationwide for a non-profit organization with a USPTO?
Munazza, it is one of the key questions of today's program. Trademarking is vital for branding a business in any particular industry, and it is one of the most valuable intangible assets of any organization, regardless of a business or non-business entity. A non-profit is capable of filing a trademark as well, and registration of a trademark is a three-way process. Searching of a trademark name availability, publishing legal notices in newspapers, finally issuance of the trademark certificate by the USPTO. And a trademark is renewed every after 10 years.
That was quite explanatory. But Mr. Umar, how to ascertain if the name is obtainable to file trademark with the United States Patent and Trademark Office?
Most applications are rejected due to name availability. So, before filing an application to file for trademarking, name availability is checked in different search engines such as Google and Yahoo, and it is also checked on the USPTO website. Searching a name for trademark is a complex and time-consuming process, and it is highly recommended to use a professional's help.
Now, tell us, can a non-profit pay out salaries to the employees and management, and what is the procedure?
A non-profit pays salaries to employees and managers, provided they are working for a non-profit organization. Additionally, withholding registration is filed in a state where a non-profit is registered in order to apply for payroll registration.
Mr. Umar, my next question to you is, can a non-profit organization or its members be sued?
Yes, Munazza, absolutely. A legally registered entity in the United States can be sued, and non-profit is also a legally registered entity and it is capable to be sued. So it should abide applicable laws to remain in good standing.
Can you please tell our listeners now, does a non-profit seek sales and use tax registration, and what is its purpose and process to apply?
Munazza, it may or may not. Sales tax registration is recommended for a non-profit organization to avoid paying sales tax on purchasing taxable items. Department of Revenue or the Division of Taxation and Finance issue sales tax permits to non-profit entities.
My next question to you is related to EIN, that is, Employer Identification Number. So, why does a non-profit organization acquire an Employer Identification Number from the Internal Revenue Services?
Every profit and non-profit organization are required to acquire an EIN number, which is used to number 1, open bank account, number 2, filing taxes, number 3, to hire employees, number 4, to get a withholding number, number 5, getting sales tax permit, and number 6, to get business licenses.
Why does a non-profit organization require to acquire withholding number?
A withholding number is used to hire employees and it is issued by the Department of Revenue or the Division of Taxation and Finance.
DoClick's Voice FM is committed to providing you 100% free advertising to make sure you're successful. We encourage and request every user and listener to support us in maintaining and improving technology. Life has no replacement, so drive safe and call 911 for any emergency. Stay tuned on DoClick's Voice FM, a global 24/7 cloud radio, the only radio which optimizes your content in search engines and brings targeted traffic to achieve your goals. We are now back to the program where we talk about starting, maintaining, and stopping a nonprofit organization.
What is estimated time to register for a complete nonprofit organization?
There is no fixed time frame, and based on my experience, it generally takes 60 to 90 days. It all depends on the nature of a nonprofit, and every non-profit filing must be approved by the state, federal, and the Attorney General Office.
Now, let us talk about the cancellation of a non-profit too. So, how to cancel a non-profit organization?
Munazar, to cancel a non-profit voluntarily, articles of dissolution are filed with the consent of the responsible parties of non-profit organizations to terminate a non-profit organization.
Now, can I ask, how does each registration of non-profit entities with state and federal impact income tax filings?
Giving donation to a non-profit entity is one of the most attractive features of a non-profit organization, and registration with the state and federal for a non-profit organization gives the ability to donors and receivers to apply expenses and contribution in their tax returns.
Now, let us know, how can a donor verify if non-profit organization has valid federal tax exempt status?
It is very important for a donor to make sure if non-profit has a valid federal tax status. The Internal Revenue Services maintains an online database to verify if the organization has a valid tax exemption status.
What documents does a non-profit organization provide donors to claim the donation on their income tax returns?
Munazza, both parties, donors and donees, are required to report their contributions and distributions to the Internal Revenue Services. And a non-profit organization issues letters to all donors at end of the year for the amount they have given to the organization in donations to claim on their tax returns.
Let's move forward to the next question. So, what records does a non-profit maintain to defend against any audit from donors and departments?
Munazza, non-profits are very sensitive entities and audit chances of non-profit organizations are very high. So it is highly recommended to keep all donors and vendor records to defend an audit. The IRS may ask you to conduct audit at location or simply send the requested documents to the IRS.
Mr. Umar, tell us now about resignation from a non-profit. So, what is the process to voluntarily leave non-profit organization?
You can file a resignation to the board and request to remove your name from the articles of a non-profit organization.
That was quite enlightening, and I believe it must be for the listeners as well. So, moving forward, is service contribution acceptable or deductible under a non-profit organization rather than contributing cash?
No, Munazza, a person who makes a contribution to a non-profit organization in the form of service is not tax deductible. Only cash and a tangible asset are tax deductible, such as a car.
Can a non-profit organization register as limited liability company?
Munazza, a non-profit, does not pay taxes, so there is no attraction whether it is filed as a corporation or an LLC. But still, a few states of the United States have a provision to register a non-profit organization as a limited liability company, but the Internal Revenue Services may or may not allow a federal tax exemption to a non-profit entity which is registered as a limited liability company with the state.
Now, let us move forward to the last question of today's program. So, can a non-profit organization generate income rather than collecting contributions by selling products or providing services?
Munazza, certainly it can. Even though a non-profit organization is created to collect donations, the Internal Revenue Services allow a non-profit organization to receive unrelated income, which is same as a business income, and it will be reported and taxed as a regular income.
I thank you, Mr. Umar, to visit our studio, and you have shared such valuable information about a non-profit organization with our listeners, and I hope you'll have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, and I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you have a wonderful day as well, Miss Munazza.
Let me conclude this program with a short message. appreciate and support non-profit organizations, organizers, and thanks to generous donors who help states and less fortunate people. Additionally, follow the laws to help non-profits live and grow. Your presenter, Munaza Arfa, says goodbye to everyone with a wish to have a wonderful rest of the day and visit at www.infotaxsquare.com for any inquiry about starting a new non-profit, maintenance of an existing non-profit, and withdraw a non-profit organization.